What's up, everyone? Welcome back. We are working on Project Beautiful, Danielle cb7. We're doing the bb6 cluster swap. That's the 97 to 2001 Honda Prelude instrument cluster into the 90 to 93 Accord. So initially what we're doing is we're taking our original cluster here that we were going to have going into the car, and we're going to get rid of it for this cluster that we have sitting here. In the last video we worked on getting some pigtails that are going to be plug and play for the cb7 harness to wire up here to the cluster. Got those pigtails sitting right here, labeled, ready for us to wire up to our new cluster here. So here we go with part 2. We're going to get all these pigtails wired up to this instrument cluster. So we're looking at the back side of the bb6 cluster that we're going to swap into the car, and I still need to do a couple things to get this thing prepped and ready for us to wire our new pigtails in. As you can see, we got 4 plugs, 1, 2, 3, and our 4th one here in the middle. This was a manual cluster. This plug here, this 4th one, this green one in the middle, this doesn't even exist. This all here is for the automatic stuff, and we're not even going to use any of the automatic stuff in this cluster, so we'll start off by taking that one out, and we're just going to get rid of it. Next thing I need to do is I need to finish up getting all this foam tape crap off of all these wires. That way I can follow each one of these wires, lead all the way back to where it pins out into the connectors to ensure that we get all our wiring correct. So we'll start this off with all our main powers to the cluster. All our main powers on the Prelude cluster are the yellow wires on connector C at C3, C4, and pin C9. C3 we're not going to be using. It is a dedicated power for the daytime running light bulb. C4 we will hook up to the yellow on the Accord located on plug A, pin 5, and C9 will connect to the yellow wire on our Accord plug B, slot 14. And our final power here on the Prelude cluster at A10 is a white and yellow. Mine looks white and brown, but it's a white and yellow. That is the power for the immobilizer light. So if you guys plan on using the immobilizer light for whatever reason, you will want to connect that wire into your yellow mains of the Prelude cluster. Now for our grounds, the black wires in Prelude A, 4, and B8 will run to the Accord's blacks on B7 and A7. Next is our alternator 12 volt power, which is in Prelude B9, black and yellow, That will get connected to the Accord B17, black and yellow. Illumination. A1, B11, red and black, goes to the Accords red and black. A1, B9. Dimmer control. Prelude has two of them. The red on E2 and B10 will connect to the red on Accord A2. Vehicle speed sensor signal. Prelude C6 blue and white stripe to Accord orange A4. RPM signal. Prelude C5 blue to the Accords A6 blue. Coolant temperature sensor wire. Prelude C10 yellow with green stripe to the Accords red on C5. Fuel level signal. Preludes A12 yellow with blue stripe to the Accords yellow with white on C18. Check engine light is this gray with red stripe wire here on B16, and that is going to attach to the Accords green with red stripe wire here on B15. The battery alternator warning light is the white with blue stripe on C1, which will connect to the white with blue stripe on the Accords B16. Oil light is the yellow with red stripe in C7, and that will connect to the yellow with red stripe on the Accords B18. The vehicle speed sensor signal is the blue and white wire on our Preludes B3, and that's going to connect to the Accords orange on A4. Our RPM signal is the blue wire here on Preludes B5, and that's going to connect to our blue wire on the Accords A6. Low fuel light is going to be the light green with red stripe wire on C11, and we're going to hook that up to the Accords green with red on C19. Our high beam control wire is the orange with white stripe on B2. We'll connect to the Accords red with blue stripe on B3. The high beam power is the red with yellow stripe at C1, which will connect to Accords red with green stripe at B4. The brake light is the green with red stripe wire at A5. We'll connect to the Accords green with red stripe located at B10. The left turn is the green with blue stripe wire at A6. That will connect to the Accords green with blue stripe wire at B8. Right turn is the green with yellow stripe at A7, which will connect to the Accords green with yellow stripe at B2. The seat belt light is the red with blue stripe wire at A13, which will go to the Accords red with blue stripe wire at B6. Alright, so at this point, I'm now finished wiring up everything I need to wire for the CB into plug A on the bb6 cluster. These last three that are remaining, I will not be using. If you guys have cruise control, this blue and black stripe wire you would want to hook up to your red stripe wire on the Accords connector at B11. These next two here is the white with yellow stripe for the immobilizer light in the cluster. The pink is the immobilizer light 12 volt power source. So if you guys want to designate the immobilizer light to use it for something else, you've got your pink wire, which is the power, and your light ground would be the white with the yellow. For me, I'm finished with this plug, and now we're going to be focusing on finishing up everything we're going to use out of both of these plugs. This orange wire here at B12 is our trunk open light, and we will run that to the Accords green with black stripe at C12. Driver door light is the green wire here at C14. We are going to connect that into the Accords green with blue stripe wire on connector C, slot 13. The passenger or passenger front door is this green with orange stripe wire at B15, and that will get wired to the Accords green with red stripe wire at C1. At this point, we're getting really close to being done with this thing. In fact, if you have a coupe without ABS, you're just about really finished with this thing. For all of us that have four-door models without ABS, we're going to have a few more things to do. So after the next few things to hook up, that's where the fun for us with the four doors is really going to begin. Alright, this next part is optional, and that is the brake lamp warning light. The Prelude does not have one. Our CBs have it. If you don't want to have it, you don't need to wire it up, and you can skip over this next little part here. But if you guys want to continue to have a warning light to alert you to your brake bulbs going out, we're going to need to find ourselves a bulb to designate for that on the Prelude cluster here. And one thing that we need to know, you need to know about the brake lamp warning light is that light is triggered by an open ground. So when your bulb goes out and it senses an open ground, it trips that light. So we're going to have to find a light on our cluster that operates off of an open ground instead of your traditional way that a light works with ground. Now, one of the warning lights on the Prelude cluster that is tripped by an open ground and that is not being put to use at this point is our ABS light. The blue with white stripe wire on connector C, slot 6. We're going to end up connecting this one here to the Accords white with green stripe wire on connector C, slot 4. And now we're at a point where, regardless of what model you have, we need to add a few things into this cluster. Coupe guys, you only have one thing to add to this cluster, and for us four-door guys, we have 3 more things to add into this cluster. Now, one thing we all have to take care of is the dome light wire, the black and white one on connector C2 of the Accord. Our dome light happens to run and be powered or whatever out of our cluster. Or on the Preludes, the dome light isn't powered out of the cluster. However, on the 5th gen Prelude cluster, they did happen to have a dome light output, and it's in this empty slot here on connector B, slot 13. So what we all need to do is take one of our wires that we don't happen to be using out of our connector to add in to slot B13 to wire up to our dome light wire. This one took me a minute to figure out how to get the pins out, so I figured I'd show you guys. In order to unlock these pins, you must remove, this was in one piece, you must remove the locker that holds the pins from pulling out of the plug. And in order to get that out, it's actually 2 pieces. So first, in order to get that out, is you have to take this one and you slide it out just like that. And now when you do that, that allows you to squeeze in the side tabs that lock in on the 2 side slots right here. And then you can, from the bottom side, take a flathead screwdriver and pop that piece out. Once you remove that guy, you can take your safety pin down into the top part of the slot. You'll slide it down in, up against the pin, pull the lock tab outward, and at the same time, pull your pin and wire out. We're getting really close to being finished with the wiring on this cluster. Now, one thing is that this 5th gen cluster, for whatever strange reason, they have the battery warning light and the brake warning light bridged together using a diode somewhere here in the cluster. Now, with this being wired into the cb7, that diode bridging those two together is going to end up causing our brake light to constantly be on. So what we need to do is we need to dig into the cluster, find where that diode is, and eliminate it. And that will take care of the brake light issue on our cluster once we get this thing all finished up and plugged into the car. Now, to locate the diode, you're going to want to unplug connector C. You're going to want to remove a few of these instrument warning light bulbs, and then at each of these 3 plastic nipples, you'll want to take a small flathead screwdriver and very carefully lift the circuit board off of our cluster. And when you peel that back, you will find our diode bridging together those 2 circuits. I'll cut the leg off the top of the diode here where my finger is. I'll slip some heat shrink over it. We'll bend that thing out of the way, and then that should take care of that. Alright, so I have one remaining thing left to do before finishing this up, and that is to deal with the right door triggers for our door open signals. And the CB cluster uses individual lights for each one of our door triggers, and the Prelude cluster uses one light for both its door trigger signals. So we're going to have to add in our 2 rear door triggers into the Prelude cluster itself. Now, the way the Prelude's door trigger circuits work is we've got our 2 doors right here and here. These 4 trace nubs are 2 diodes for our 2 doors on the Prelude. Now, in order for us to be able to add in our 2 rear door triggers to this Prelude cluster, grab your solder, your soldering iron, and those 2 brand new diodes that I had listed at the very beginning of the video of all the things you're going to need to complete this cluster swap. Because you got 2 ways that we can go about this. One way is we can go directly from our cord plug and solder in each one of our diodes to these 2 trace nubs. So one diode will go to one and one will go to the other for each one of our door triggers. Now, we're going to keep this cluster 100% plug and play like it's part of the Prelude cluster. And the way we're going to do that is the Prelude cluster happens to have at slot B4 and B7, they have 2 short empty trace studs. So what we can do is we are going to take each one of our diodes and we're going to solder it from trace stub B4 to here, and from B7 to here. And then we will add in a wire to our plug B at each slot and get those wired up to each one of our door triggers. Alright, the wiring is finally finished. This cluster is now set up to the dash harness in our CB7. If you guys are wiring one of these things up into your CB, I hope this video really helped you out. Next thing on our list to do to the project is going to be to get this cluster to fit into the CB7 dashboard. but we're going to leave that for another time. We're going to end this video here. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Till next time, peace out.